thank you to the Pacific Grove Residents Association and the Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate your inviting us. Good evening. My name is Risa Foss, and I represent the League of Women Voters of the Monterey Peninsula.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters, the Chamber, the city for putting this event together. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to have a better understanding of what the issues are these days. I want to just explain for a second what a special district this is that we live in. Risa outlined it earlier, but we're the incredibly dramatic Big Sur coast. Of the 1,100 miles of coastline in the 15 coastal counties, one of the most spectacular pieces of the coast is the 5th District. We're Carmel, the soft sands of Carmel Beach. We're Carmel Valley, all the way out to Kashawa. We're Pebble Beach. We're Pacific Grove, the quaint Victorian community that you live in, an incredible place to be. We're also the Highway 68 corridor all the way to the Salinas River, 5 miles up the river. We're the first capital of the state of California, the first indoor theater, the first outdoor theater, the home of the first constitution of this state. We're the oldest continuously operating jazz festival in the United States. We're the oldest golf course west of the Mississippi. We're the largest marine sanctuary in the United States. There is no doubt that we are Steinbeck's Pastures of Heaven and Robinson Jeffers, the greatest meeting of land and sea. But this district is constantly under pressure, developmental pressures, economic pressures, and for the last few years, as a community, we have stood up and said, there are principles in this community, in this district, that we will not compromise because we value the quality of life that we enjoy here. The question you get asked most when you're running for office is, why are you running again? And I think you probably find that the answer is always pretty much the same. There's work still yet to be done. But in this case, this time, this year, there are too many issues that in my mind are incomplete. We need a resolution to our water problems. We need to make sure that as we go forward, we can balance the budget on a regular basis responsibly without compromising the valued services that we provide. We need to make sure that when we talk about four-door reuse and the intention that was there to put back jobs into that community while allowing for a large amount of public open space, recreation, and habitat, that project is completed and it has a ways to go. We need to take a look at the programs that we provide and recognize, is there an opportunity for Monterey County to provide the most unique form of health care in the state, perhaps in this country, by combining a public hospital with a private hospital? Natividad Medical Center and Salinas Valley Memorial can merge and become the health care purveyor for all of the Salinas Valley. These challenges lay ahead of us. I look forward to working with you in the future, and I very, very respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
My name is Mark Del Piero, and before I begin, I'd like to thank the mayor and the city council and the city administrator for Pacific Grove for affording us all the opportunity to come here and talk about the issues of the 5th Supervisorial District for Monterey County. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a lifetime resident of Monterey County. I was born and raised up in North Monterey County, and I served on the Monterey County Board of Supervisors for 12 years. After leaving the Board of Supervisors in 1992, I served for 8 years as the attorney member of the State Water Resources Control Board. During that period of time, I served as the hearing officer for the State Board on most of the major water rights issues that were confronting the state of California. A lot of them you wouldn't know the names of. The one that everybody knows about is Mono Lake. I was the administrative law judge that ordered Los Angeles to restore Mono Lake. While I was on the Board of Supervisors, I was one of the people that Leon Panetta appointed to the committee to establish the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. After I left the Board of Supervisors for 7 years, while I was on the State Water Resources Control Board, I was the appointee of the Secretary of the California Environmental Protection Agency and was responsible for serving on the Advisory Council for the National Marine Sanctuary. Since 1999, I've been in private practice, representing mostly public water agencies and public agencies around the state of California. And in 2008, I was appointed by the U.S. Department of Justice to be the bankruptcy trustee for Monterey, San Benito, and southern Santa Clara County. I'm running for the 5th District because we have real problems in Monterey County that aren't being addressed. During the course of the questions that are going to be asked here tonight, I'm sure a number of those issues are going to be raised. I will be happy to respond to all of those, and I'll be happy to engage with anyone here in the audience about the transparency that is necessary in local government, about the issues that have been on the front page of pretty much every newspaper that is in general circulation here, about the problems with the Water Resources Agency, about the necessity of public ownership of a desalination plant, about the health care issues that are going to be confronting our county to a greater and greater extent every year, because the biggest single financial issue that is facing us, even though PERS is a real big issue, the biggest single financial issue facing us is the medical care for baby boomers. Obamacare is not enough. It's basically an expansion of Medi-Cal, and we need to understand, within the context of being on the Board of Supervisors, the Natividad Medical Center and the health care that we provide is the source of last resort for a huge number of people in our county. I look forward to having the questions. Thank you.
Hello and good evening. Thank you all for being here, and I'd like to extend my thanks to the PG Residents Association, the Chamber, and the League of Women Voters for facilitating tonight's forum. I'm Carmelita Garcia, and I'm the mayor of Pacific Grove and candidate for 5th District Supervisor. I was born and raised here. I've been here all my life, so I understand the importance of preserving our county's beauty, our environment, while we proceed into the 21st century. We do need to bring final resolution to the water issue so that we can preserve not only the jobs that we have now, but to get ready for the future and for those jobs that will come along with it. My record as mayor and being in office since 2008 in Pacific Grove clearly demonstrates that I am an effective leader. The skills that I have developed and areas that I have addressed in the city of Pacific Grove will go with me to the county level, where I will be able to utilize them as well. The county of Monterey has a lot of history. There are a lot of major issues still on the table that need to proceed. My record here in Pacific Grove has truly demonstrated that I am a person who gets things done. And I get things done by way of involving the community, listening to what they have to say, and then moving forward. A critical component to not only being an effective leader, but in achieving what one needs to achieve in order to move forward. So I very much look forward to this forum, and again, I thank all of you for being here, and as we proceed through the questions this evening, you will clearly get an idea of where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Apart from land use and water policy issues, what are the two top issues facing the Board of Supervisors?
Two top issues that are facing the Board of Supervisors, as I indicated in my opening statements. One is relatively short-term. That's the deficiency in the public employees retirement system and the long-term fiscal demands that are currently being placed on the county general fund, and also will be placed for a very long period of time on the county general fund in order to sustain the level of retirement funding that is required for past county employees. The Board of Supervisors has to develop a comprehensive program to deal with that long-term issue. It's important to recognize that the likelihood of fiscal expectations, financial expectations in terms of returns in the securities market may not necessarily be as rosy as some people would like to think. Even after the last period of time that we've had, it's been very difficult to be able to project long-term returns on the investment process. The other issue that is most important is long-term health care. Natividad Medical Center is in good shape now. Natividad Medical Center is a hospital that has the potential of affording the opportunity to Salinas Valley Memorial Hospital to give them about $5 million a year in increased revenues. The long and the short of all of this, however, is that the demands on local government to assist in the health care of our aging population is very great, and that will be the long-term issue that needs to be addressed.
CalPERS is a major issue, but also I feel that the FORA reuse plan is another one. As this plan and this body moves forward, I think it's critical that in the reassessment and redesign amendment of the plan, that it take into consideration the economic times that we are in now, and once again to truly listen to what the community has to say, the public has to say, with regards to the development that is going to occur on the former Fort Ord. I think they have to, or what has to be done is the original intent of the plan with regards to developing for the educational component out there needs to truly be adhered to or changed. So I feel strongly that as it moves forward and it is redesigned, that it has to take into consideration the current day status and what it is that the people want.
So I believe it was non-land use related issues, so I'm going to point out that one of the most difficult tasks we have these days is providing more services with less money, and balancing the budget is an incredibly complicated process. Budget's about $938 million this year with 28 different departments, about 4,300 employees, and we are constantly being asked to do more with less. That said, the other area that I think is extremely critical is that multi-legged stool called public safety. This is not just about the sheriff's department. It's about the sheriff, it's about the DA, it's about the public defender, it's about the probation department, it's about social services. And I think as you go around the community, you can visually see slippages in the safety in our communities. We need to recognize that there's more to the public safety world than just arresting and convicting, that there are opportunities to actually do early on interventions to keep people from getting into the system. But as we're being asked now to take early released prisoners out of the system at the state level and return them into this community, that is a daunting task, and we do not receive the significant monies we have. We have a desperate need for a new jail, we have a desperate need for a new probation hall, but we do not have the money that we need. We need to be aggressive in this area so that this community stays the safe community that it is.
Do you believe that the owner of our water supply should be a public agency? And I'm going to combine two things here. What public agency is best suited to partner with the private entity whose desal proposal turns out to be the best from a cost, environmental, and timetable perspective? If that agency isn't the water district, why not? Do you need me to repeat those?
Well, the City of Pacific Grove took action a couple of weeks ago to become a public agency, the Public Agency for Water, so that answers that question. However, the door is open for other cities, other agencies to come on board. I think it'd be great if more did come on board. Our action that we took loosened the log jam. So we also have the Water JPA Authority, which I think would be ideal to become the public agency. With regards to the Water Management District, they are currently working with CalAm and the Pollution Control Agency. Their proposal has gone before the PUC for review and approval. And again, that agency would be more than welcome to join Pacific Grove.
Well, I absolutely firmly believe that there needs to be a public agency as a partner in these projects, and I don't think that, quite frankly, that the necessary approvals will occur more specifically at the state level for a desal facility if there is not a public partner when this project goes before the Coastal Commission. I think that's a fatal flaw, and I'm not buying CalAm's argument that, well, you know, we had our first experience with Marina Coast and it wasn't very pleasant, and now we're afraid to do business with any other public entity. They got in bed with a bad partner. They've got a divorce. It's time to move on. And I think that it's this corporate mentality that says, you know, we'll make a lot more money if we own the facility, and we want to make sure we can get the best return for our shareholders. I don't really care about the shareholders. I'm more concerned about the ratepayers. And I think that what we need to realize is that this attitude that, well, you know, we just don't do projects with public partners. They're already doing projects with public partners. The Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project is a partnership with the Water Management District. They just signed an MOU to go ahead and proceed ahead with a groundwater replenishment project with the Pollution Control Agency and the Peninsula Water Management District. This is just a stubborn corporation saying, we're in New Jersey and we know what's good in California, and that's not appropriate.
In 1988, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, at least according to my sons, I wrote the county ordinance that requires public ownership of the desalination plant. It was passed unanimously by the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors who were on at the time. And there was some joking going on in the audience by representatives of the California American Water Company at the time we passed the ordinance. And they were joking because they said no one would ever need to build a desal plant in Monterey County. The reason that I bring that up is because that's the evidence, if you will, of why it's necessary for supervisors to have vision. It's important to understand something else. The proposal that has been put forth by the California American Water Company in the last few days is a proposal being put forth by a company that's been in violation of the law since 1995, when the State Water Resources Control Board issued 9510 and said they were stealing 10,000 acre-feet of water a year out of the Carmel Valley. Now their solution is to have the Board of Supervisors rescind the public ownership ordinance. That's sort of like a thief who's been caught after 20 years saying that the solution for his problem is to have the state legislature rescind the law on stealing. That's the situation that you have right now. It's important for a public agency to own it, and I commend the mayor of Pacific Grove for at least initiating the process.
Do you believe Cal-Am should build a desal plant against Monterey County's law? What do you think of Cal-Am's new proposal and Pacific Grove's water project with Desal America?
Then the 3-minute rule still stands, eh? All right. Well, first of all, in regards to Cal-Am thinking that they're going to overturn the local ordinance, I'm obviously not going to support that. And again, I said a few minutes ago that I firmly believe that if they go before the California Coastal Commission without a public partner, without realizing that the public health and safety issues are paramount to this community, they're not going to go very far. And I think that their argument is, we'll litigate our way through this at the local level and we'll litigate it at the federal level. Well, that'll end up going to the Supreme Court, and we're certainly not going to meet the timelines of State Order 95. The cease and desist order. As far as a new proposal, you know, it's better. They need a public partner. I don't quite understand why they're not co-located on the Pollution Control Agency's property. That's a 600-acre site. The outfall line is there. I think they're going to still have some water rights discussions and a debate to be had on that topic. And as far as the PG proposal, I've said publicly before, I'm real interested in seeing what this brings forth. I think the devil's in the details. We've heard a lot about the direct ocean intake projects. There's 2 of them. But I think that this public project may well have some viability that bears looking at. And I think it's good to see the city of Pacific Grove stepping forward and saying, all right, let's have a look at this. And as we move forward, public ownership would be the most appropriate thing. I've advocated for public ownership of the system for many, many years. It's simply a matter of where does the money come from and what's it going to cost the ratepayer.
Thank you. I answered the question, so I'm going to take this opportunity to expand a little bit about why I believe public ownership is necessary. The current retail value of water that we all pay for on a monthly basis, if we're in the Cal-Am system, is between $3,600 and $3,800 an acre foot. They've been pumping it out of the ground for free since 1995, when it was determined that what they were doing was illegal. There has been a huge diminishment in the opportunity to develop jobs throughout Monterey County, but particularly on the Monterey Peninsula, because of the absence of an available water supply. It's important for us to understand that the development of a new water supply needs to properly guard the quality of life that we enjoy here, and to make sure that it doesn't also result in a huge urban sprawl. Alternatively, we have a lot of vacant commercial buildings and vacant light industrial buildings in this county, and particularly on the Monterey Peninsula, that could afford us the opportunity to have new businesses coming in to address that 15% unemployment rate that we have to deal with here on the peninsula, and an overall unemployment rate in the county of in excess of 20%. That's one of the reasons why I believe having an inexpensive water supply is most important for all of us.
Thank you. I believe CalAM's attempt to overturn the county's ordinance is not the best foot to get off on when you want to look for partners or to try and sell your proposal. The proposal that CalAM presented to the PUC was not vetted appropriately, and what it reminded me of was the water purchase agreement and how that was authored behind closed doors. Now, there was a public forum held at the Oldemeyer Center where all of the different water proposals were given a little section of the room in there to talk about their different proposals. But the point being is that CalAM's proposal was presented on April 23rd at the City of Monterey, and that was the first public viewing of what they had presented to the PUC that day. Well, when I read that the cost of the desal they're proposing is $375 million, I had to gulp, because you have to add on top of that the Water Management District new fee that they approved. So I think we have to look very, very carefully at both sets of numbers to determine really how much the water is going to cost the ratepayers, because I don't think we're too much better off as compared to the regional desalination project when it was up. Thank you.
How would you assure that public projects are sensitive to the environment?
There's a law in California called the California Environmental Quality Act. It got passed back in 1972 by that well-known environmentalist, Ronald Reagan. He signed it. It's been the law in this state ever since. And virtually every project of any significance that is presented to the Board of Supervisors is subject to CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. It requires, before any decisions can be made, of necessity, the preparation of an EIR, an environmental impact report, that addresses each and every potential adverse impact. And if adverse impacts are identified as part of that vetting process, mitigations are required to be identified in the environmental impact report, so that the decision makers, in this case the Board of Supervisors or the County Planning Commission, can understand both what the consequences of that project are and also what the mitigations might be in order to be either able to approve it or turn it down. And that's something that oftentimes most people don't understand. Simply because a project has been presented to a decision maker doesn't mean they have to vote yes. Sometimes they get to vote no. It's provided for in the law, but you have to prepare a comprehensive EIR to make sure that you've properly evaluated the project. Sure.
Thank you. Well, I don't want to repeat what Mr. Del Piero has just said, because it is true, the CEQA, and we need to adhere to it and follow it when it comes to developments and measuring its impacts on the environment. Also, I think what comes along with that before CEQA is initiated in the consideration of projects are locations, especially when we look at the former Fort Ord and the development that is going to be forthcoming out there. I think one of the best things that we can do is to really examine the locations and the impact, not only short-term but long-term, that perhaps that particular area will have as projects move forward.
So obviously, the CEQA process is the key to making sure that every I is dotted and T crossed. But there's one thing that you probably ought to realize is that there's an ongoing effort to erode that process. And under the heading of streamlining, which frankly is just a word for shortcutting, there's been a constant desire by the developmental community to go ahead and shorten that process, which will not give you adequate review. In a world of proper projects, you shouldn't approve anything that doesn't have the proper infrastructure. That's obviously important. I think that as far as public input goes, the CEQA process should never be rushed. If the documents are slow in coming out, extend the time for public review. If there's questions in the public that surface a desire or an allegation of inadequacy, that should be taken seriously, and we should go ahead and allow the public process to take the time that's necessary for a full public vetting. If the county hadn't been listening to the public's concerns about this process, we would not have gone and spent the money to go ahead and implement a new agenda review process and a new agenda posting that will take place via the internet that is just going to go into place next week. And that will allow the public a better opportunity through the digital world to be able to access the EIRs online, the agendas online, public comments and letters online. It'll be a much more user-friendly opportunity to go ahead and better understand the projects as they come forward.
How do you feel about the Pebble Beach development and open space plan recently approved by the county and now before the Coastal Commission?
I think it should be approved. I feel many years went into this, a lot of time, a lot of considerations, mitigations, and what have you. And my understanding is that everyone is on board and came to a mutual agreement with that particular development. I think it's going to be a huge boost for our local economy. Of course, different cities will feel different impacts. It'll bring job creation not only during the construction, but also afterwards. So I think it was a huge project that was very well done, and I think it's a good example that we could continue to follow in the future.
Thank you. I do agree the project is significantly better. I think that there was a very good effort by the former late executive director, Peter Douglas, to sit down with the company and negotiate directly with the ownership and make sure that it was appropriate after all these years that a project come forward. I think there's two components that are still up for public debate. One is, what is the affordable housing going to look like? Do we get to just put it down some money? I believe it's about $3 million and build that housing somewhere else, perhaps in Pajaro, perhaps in Castroville? I don't think that's appropriate. I think that if we're going to have an affordable housing component, it ought to be a responsible product that is local and not some place far away where transportation, accessibility to services, and actually it isolates these workers and these people from the community that they work in, and they spend too much time traveling. There's also a piece that basically is little known, but is to me very important. Many years ago, when I was with the city council in Monterey, we put into place an agreement that if the Pebble Beach project got developed, and this was when it had a golf course attached to it, that they would dedicate to the city of Monterey the original capital site for the state of California, the old capital site in Monterey. There is an agreement in place that says if the project gets approved, the old capital site goes to the city of Monterey. Now, they're going to argue that, frankly, it's not the same project, so that deal doesn't count. I say it still matters.
Both the mayor and the supervisor have fairly characterized the project that's currently pending in front of the California Coastal Commission. It's a project that has been produced as a result of significant amount of compromise. It's a project that's been produced with a significant amount of give and take on the part of both municipalities, the environmental community, and the Pebble Beach Company itself. I've got no significant objections to the project as it's currently characterized. I think it's important and appropriate to recognize, however, that the quality of the project that's currently pending in front of the California Coastal Commission is far better than previous plans that were floated, if you will, by the company itself. Many projects have been submitted in regards to that area, and it looks like this is ultimately going to be resolved. I think it's also appropriate to point out that there have been efforts by a number of people over a long period of time in order to ensure the preservation of the environmental integrity of the forest and the Del Monte Forest inside of Pebble Beach. I just saw Karen Strasser-Kaufman, the former county supervisor for the 5th District, is here. She's right over there, and no one spent more time working on the Del Monte Forest Local Coastal Plan than she. Just an observation of someone who spent a large portion of her life trying to preserve the environmental resources of the peninsula.
Next, I'm going to combine a couple of things to make sure we get through all of our questions. Would you consider merging the two solid waste authorities in Monterey County, and sort of related, with reduced resources available to local government, what's your position on zero-based budgeting?
There's a couple of reasons why merging the solid waste authority makes sense. There's two. If you look simply at the travel distance, hauling waste from North County down to the landfill in South County doesn't seem to make a whole lot of logistical sense. It doesn't make environmental sense because of air quality issues, and it certainly doesn't make economic sense. So I think there's an opportunity out there to actually do something that's practical in the business world, and I've been an advocate for merging for a long time, and I think this issue is going to come to the forefront in a very short period of time. Zero-based budgeting gets an awful lot of discussion and an awful lot of consideration. What I am a big supporter of is long-range budgeting. At the county over the last few years, we've gone ahead and looked out 5 years and do a 3-year budgeting plan. This year, we will actually be able to exist on a status quo budget. There'll be very, very little impact, but that's because 5 years ago, we made drastic cuts, and we can look out and tell where the economic trends are. And if you look at the county's trends, this year we're going to be okay, but next year it's 10 million. The next year it's about 25 million. So if you don't plan ahead, you're going to end up with a problem in the very near term. And that's what's wrong with the state of California. The previous governor just kicked the economic can down the road and borrowed, and you don't borrow your way out of debt. And in this case, we've got an opportunity to take a look at this, the current economy that we sit in, and we will enter into these budget negotiations next week.
With regards to consolidating waste management, if it's going to help the ratepayers, absolutely. Okay. So with regards to ratepayers, if it's going to reduce their bill, by all means, we need to do what we can to help in that particular area. As already mentioned, with regards to the environment, the less vehicles on the road, the less emissions that are created, reduces the greenhouse gas levels and what have you, all of which cities and states are bound by to have a certain level, meet a certain level with regards to reduction. In regards to zero-based budgeting, I think it's a great idea. It holds everyone accountable, and it will help save taxpayers money in the long run when we are actually budgeting for what the real need is.
In regards to the Solid Waste Authority and the consolidation, there are all kinds of good reasons why consolidation of the two entities should be given very, very serious consideration, and I would be supportive of seeing those two entities consolidated. The bigger issue is long-term planning for a landfill space in the county. We've realized over the course of the last 25 years or so a reduction in landfills, and one of the things that was raised by both the mayor and the supervisor is the contribution to air pollution because of the transport costs to get waste from North Monterey County to the southern part of the county. That's because no one's planned any new landfill. And planning for new landfill for the 21st century is something that is really important. The solid waste to energy project in the central Salinas Valley is equally important. There are a variety of alternative methods to deal with solid waste. all of which need to be comprehensively evaluated as a single plan by a single entity. As to zero-based budgeting, I think it's a great idea. It necessitates cooperation from a majority of the Board of Supervisors, and it also necessitates cooperation from those elected county department heads who have expectations that have grown up over the long-term budgeting programs that have been used by the county.
Okay, on transparency, what would you do to improve transparency in county government? Is lack of transparency a serious problem in your opinion? And I'm going to combine a couple other related ones to make sure we have time for all the subjects. We now have the agenda on the web before the meeting. What would you do to better enable you to know what your constituents desire you to do before it's discussed? And if you're elected, will you listen to testimony, pay attention to petitions, or will we find it necessary to referendum bad developments such as, and there was an example, but I won't mention that one.
Is there an issue with transparency? Yes. Has there been a problem with what I refer to as backroom deals? Yes. Is there an opportunity for a solution for those problems? Most definitely, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about is a supervisorial district on a board of supervisors. This is the public's business. Hiding documents, hiding what's going on from the public is in direct contradiction to what county supervisors are supposed to do. We're supposed to be elected representatives. Singularly, the most important thing that we do is represent the public. Keeping them out, closing doors in their faces, and precluding them from having a major role in their own government is in direct contradiction to those constitutional guarantees that are embodied in the state constitution and the U.S. Constitution. Our constituents need to understand that we pay attention and listen. Whether we always agree or not is not the point. The point is that they need to have an appreciation that their elected representatives are doing the best they can in evaluating all of the respective positions that are brought before them at a public meeting. When petitions are presented, they need to be seriously considered. When people want appointments, they need to be given. And then supervisors need to do what supervisors are supposed to do, supervise.
So yes, with regards to transparency, there is always opportunity for improvement. We're supposed to be conducting our business in the open, and that's the way it should be, and I will not waffle on that. I like the idea that the agendas are on the county's website, and you can also watch county meetings, which is great. I think it's great that they're going to be adding CEQA documents and other information. In my opinion, the more, the better, because you cannot give people too much information. I think it's important for the public to be informed. That way they can be engaged, and that's a critical part to operating the government. With regards to responding to constituents, I have email, I have a cell phone, I answer both, I return everything. I think meeting with constituents to listen to their concerns, especially if there are items on the agenda to review as well. Listening to the public, number one, I think it's a shame when people have to go out and collect signatures to get the attention of their elected officials. That should be absolutely avoided at all cost, no matter what, even if it includes making those difficult, unpopular decisions. Thank you.
So I already spoke briefly about how to make things more accessible to the public. You know, nobody runs against an incumbent and says he's doing a good job. So it seems to me kind of likely that Mark and others are going to say, you know, this is wrong and that's wrong. And, you know, under the heading of the word transparency, there's two bad examples. One is Steve Collins. And I don't think anybody realized how funky Steve was. If being stupid was a convictable offense, he would have been in jail a long time ago. And I think his ego overtook him too, and we had absolutely no understanding that he was actually billing people for meetings with me that never happened. He billed for a meeting where I wasn't in my office, I wasn't in the county, I wasn't in the country, I was in Croatia, and he billed his clients for 5 hours a meeting with me. That kind of behavior is unacceptable, and as soon as we realized what was going on, obviously the issue came to the surface as quickly as possible. We tried to deal with it. The other one is the allegation that FORA, Fort Ord Use Authority, was hiding some documents in regards to the cleanup of Fort Ord. The simple explanation is FORA doesn't have those documents. The contractor does. It's like if you put an addition on your house and you hired a contractor to build the addition on your house, and you go ahead and say, here's the money, pay the bills. You don't actually know who he paid, and you don't know how much he paid. And that's the same situation with the cleanup. The Fort Ord Use Authority paid Arcades.
What criteria would you use to evaluate the proposed zip line at Jack's Peak and the proposed horse racing track at Fort Ord?
Well, I have to tell you, the zip line, it's like, give me a break. I think the county has a lot more opportunity for creativity than going down that road. Oh yeah, the horse racing track, right. When I look at Monterey County and I think about our tourism industry, I ask myself, why do people come here? And so it's pretty simple. We have the magnificent oceans that we're surrounded by, our peaks and valleys. We have an enormous amount of history here when you just look at the missions, City of Monterey, Pacific Grove, and the history that just surrounds us. And when I think about this particular project, what I ask myself is, gee, does it really fit what we have now? And then the other question I pose to myself is the school, the university, and whether or not as a parent, if I lived out of the area, my child was accepted, would I really want to drop them off, knowing that in the same general vicinity there would be a horse race track. I just don't think it's really conducive with what we have here to offer in Monterey County with regards to our tourism. And as far as the jobs, I think most of them are going to be pretty, require a certain level of expertise that I'm not quite sure our residents have here. Thank you.
So I think I'm quoted in the Coast Weekly today under a variety of different quotes as saying that there may be a place for a zipline project, but it's certainly not in Jack's Peak. Like any other project, if somebody proposes something, I'm obligated to take a look at it. In the world of sort of a democratic process, it seems to me we take a look at something and then register an opinion. And it just seems that in that forest, what we should be looking at are expansion opportunities and perhaps even some form of better relationship with the Parks District, the Regional Parks District. I'm not opposed to the Regional Parks District taking over the operations if they're so inclined. There's also a large amount of native pine forest surrounding that property that could be ripe for acquisition from the Pebble Beach Company. Several hundred acres, and it would be an appropriate addition to that park. In regards to the Monterey Downs project, as I said with the zip line, I'm going to take a serious look at it. Obviously, it needs to, as I said earlier, have the appropriate infrastructure, the roads, the water, those issues. It does appear to have an interesting jobs component in it. There was 37,000 people working at that base when it closed, and we made a promise to the communities of Seaside, Marina, and the county, and Salinas, that we would put about 18,000 of those jobs back. And we need to forget that that is something we promised those communities and not get in an argument over the haves versus the have-nots. That community is entitled to some sort of economic recovery from that base closure. It was the largest base closure in the United States at the time.
Jack's Peak Park is a passive park. Under the county Parks Department plan, there are a number of county parks. Some of them are for active recreational opportunities, and some of them are for passive park experiences. Jack's Peak has been and was designated as a passive park many, many years ago. The idea that having a zip line there and having tons of people climbing on a bus to get somewhere in the vicinity of Pacific Meadows and then go screaming down the canyon seems to me to be a less than an appropriate use for a passive park that was designated as a passive park about 20 or 25 years ago. As to horse racing at Fort Ord, and that was the question. It wasn't. I'm assuming no one's interested in that 1,100 or 1,500 houses that's going along with the horse racing proposal. But as to the horse racing proposal, I'd have to be able to take a look at where it's proposed to be able to effectively determine whether or not it's a good use. My initial reaction is it's probably not a good use. And since they have pari-mutuel betting at the Monterey Fairgrounds, that's probably the closest we need to get.
Besides the obvious construction, agriculture, and tourism job markets, what areas will you specifically focus your attention on to decrease the high unemployment rate in Monterey County?
You know, the unemployment rate in Monterey County is catastrophic. I think we need to realize that the county's been rather lax in actually deciding what is appropriate development for this area, what are appropriate jobs to be created. And for that reason, we formed, for the first time ever, a department directly out of the CAO's office that will provide an opportunity for businesses that want to locate in Monterey to be able to figure out if they are appropriate for this community, if the resources they need are here, and is it the kind of business that we want. And if we look at our economy, it's ag, it's tourism, and it's now the third leg, which replaced the military that was here. It's education and research. We need to recognize that with the academic institutions and the research institutions that rim the Monterey Bay Area, we are the research and academic center of the coast of California. We can do better. We should be the Scripps of the West Coast, the Woods Hole of the West Coast, and we have that opportunity, and that is our underutilized resource to date. With that underpinning, we can go ahead and continue to have this the vital community that it is. But we have to recognize that we need a place for people to go when they want to talk about doing business in this community, to get an early understanding of what fits in this town and doesn't fit. And most of the times we're in reaction to what developers tell us, and you find yourself responding instead of leading the right kind of job creation.
We produce brilliant kids. We have academic institutions at Cal State Monterey Bay, at UC Santa Cruz, at the Monterey Institute of International Studies, and we don't give them the opportunity to stay here. We don't give them the opportunity to start new businesses. We don't give them the opportunity to exercise their entrepreneurial desires. We don't give them the opportunity to dream their dreams. We don't do that. We take it for granted. Kids who grow up here, who are bright and excited about the opportunities that present themselves in the technologies of the 21st century, they go someplace else. That's my biggest concern about the long-term future and sustainability of our economy in Monterey County. I believe that it's appropriate and important for the Board of Supervisors to do more than just say, yeah, we support economic development. We need to do those things that are necessary in order to keep those really bright kids here. Growing economies for the 21st century that folks like you and I can only dream about, okay? That's what needs to be done. There needs to be an articulation of vision for what the economy of Monterey County is going to be in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, and in the next 50 years, and we need to lay the groundwork for that now so that we can realize those dreams.
Well, those are really good comments. And so I'm trying to think, how do I add to this? What I ask myself is really what kind of control do we have? As the Board of Supervisors, really our primary role is to set policy. However, having said that, what comes to mind, and I think a discussion would be very good to start this, would be how can we take a role in helping businesses, new and those in existence, to succeed? So if a business is about to go under, to examine that, and is there a role that the Board of Supervisors could play, Or is there a resource that the Board of Supervisors may know about that perhaps this business entity does not know about that could perhaps help them? Now, that's a real big statement, and that's why I say I think a good conversation about that would be worthwhile. The agricultural industry in 2011 provided 79,000 jobs. Now, of the unemployment rate, I have to confess, I don't know if that's part of it. But I think for the most part, the employees that work in the fields, that should be a gateway for them to citizenship, and that the county should take a lead in helping, the workers achieve that. Thank you.
Transportation congestion and safety is a growing problem in Monterey County. What have you done or would you do to improve this? What would you like to do in the future to help transportation congestion and safety? And what is your plan for reducing traffic congestion on Highway 68? Where do you stand on further development in the 68 corridor?
That's about 5 questions. The first thing that you do is stop approving projects, because you can't fix the parking lot that exists between Toro Park and York Road if you continue to dump more traffic onto the road while you're wringing your hands saying there's a problem. That's the first thing you do. The second thing you do is you have to try and figure out, since the entirety of the Highway 68 corridor has been built out in very significant densities that presume the utilization of individual cars, what you can do in order to try and relieve that problem. You can do Band-Aid approaches, stoplights, 4-laning strips, trying to figure out how you can provide some kind of public transportation. But the fact of the matter is, and this is probably the most devastating thing that people have to come to grips with, once you've made a mess out of a road, it's very difficult to fix it. And anybody who sits here and says they're going to fix it for you either hasn't really faced up to the reality of the trouble that's been created out there, or is telling you something that is probably just a hope and a prayer. It necessitates a major change in the way people who live on the Highway 68 corridor, and given the quality of the housing out there and the cost of the housing out there, it's a lot of professional folks. You have to get them to change their lifestyles in order to pursue public transportation. That's the only alternative.
Well, there are a number of housing developments that went up along Highway 68. And I would have to agree. It's about stopping development and trying to take care of the mess that is out there already. Public transportation, sure, I encourage that, to the best of the ability that people can actually use it, coming back and forth to their jobs and what have you. I was given a little bit of history today by way of email, and I don't know all of it, but Lady Bird Johnson named that Highway 68 corridor something that I think should have preserved it in its natural state. And I think if that is truly what occurred, and there's documentation to that effect, well, then it ought to be left alone, and it should be honored until it's changed. Thank you.
Indicative of my feelings about development on 68 was my no vote on the Corral de Tierra market. An ill-conceived project in the wrong spot with devastating impacts both to the roadway and the scenic beauty of that highway. And as far as what have we been doing in my office to get projects going that make a difference, I'd have to say that probably the one I'm proudest of is ending the Hatton Canyon Freeway debate and putting a climbing lane on the Carmel Hill that seemed to do an incredibly good job of reducing the congestion at a fraction of the cost of that freeway. And it's those smaller projects that are deliverable, that are affordable, and that actually make a difference. If you look at the improvements that were done in front of Ryan Ranch, for example, the circulation improvements in front of the community hospital, the right turn lanes, the dual turns, and Laurelis grade, those smaller projects that the county actually can go out and do with an encroachment permit from Caltrans are deliverable projects that make a difference while you wait around for these gargantuan projects that never seem to come to fruition. Prunedale Bypass, for example, a project custom discussed for many, many years. Finally, we have the Prunedale Improvement Program, which is going into place